Yo, what up guys, it's Flark, and welcome to my beginner's guide to DK PvP. There's going to be 3 videos here. One for General, one for Frost, and one for Unholy, and I'm hoping that they address a huge barrier to entry problem that we're currently facing in PvP right now. Recent guides are a little over-encumbered with information. The borrowed power systems, soulbinds, covenants, conduits, legendaries, double legendaries, tier sets, are just taking up all the airtime for YouTube videos, leaving fundamental and rudimentary mechanics that you need to know for PvP behind. Things like macros and add-ons, sure, but also your offensive burst rotation, when to use defensive cooldowns and against what, your peeling, how to peel for your teammates, popular comps and what to do about them, like, gee, I don't know, Rogue Mage, is all just assumed information right now, which for new PvEers trying to get into PvP for the first time, or just new players in general, just trying to get into PvP, it's 10 to 15 years of assumed information that they don't have, leaving them in a situation where they're probably going, oh, I just died in 2.5 seconds. Was there anything I could have done to not die in 2.5 seconds? And that's a little bit overwhelming and a problem and makes PvP unfun or impossible to get into. So I'm going to try and lower that barrier to entry down a little bit with these videos. Now, there's still going to be a ton of information to cover, and these are in no way going to be short videos, but I'm going to try and do my best to categorize the information and put timestamps below. So if there's anything you have specific questions on, anything you're specifically struggling with, you can just skip to that timestamp and get the information that you need without being overloaded or bombarded and just compounding the problem and making it worse. So I will do my absolute best to make the timestamps very valuable, and you can just click wherever you want to go and get the information that you need right now. Now, of course, like I said, there's going to be 3 videos. Some things all DK specs share, like Chains of Ice, Death's Advance, Anti-Magic Shell. All the information that both specs share I'm going to have in this general beginner's guide video. And then there's going to be 2 more videos, one for Frost and one for Unholy, that just cover all the niche stuff or unique stuff to those specs. And let's get right into it from there. No more introduction, macros. Let's start right there. So some good general macros, some good framework macros that you can use are certain things like targeting arena macros. So let's start right there. It's very simple. This one line of information here, /cast, in brackets, target equals arena1, bracket, the ability, in this case, Death Grip. You can see right from my Gladius right here that I have the Gladius Addon, you can see Arena 1 is the top person, Arena 2 is the next person down, Arena 3 is the next person down from there on the Arena user interface. So when you join an Arena, the enemy team is displayed right on the right side of the screen, and Arena 1 is at the top and it goes down from there. So pretty much this simple line allows you to very easily bypass targeting a player, gripping the player, retargeting the last player, by just, with any targeted ability, making it one macro that you can put on your bar and just use at any time. It's quick, it's efficient, it's very important. So, like I said, this one's for Death Grip, but if you just replace the word Death Grip with Strangulate, a silence that both DK specs have, or Asphyxiate, or Mind Freeze, the kick that both DKs have, you can pretty much use an Arena123 Macro, they're called, for any of those spells. And you can effectively do that. You can kick a healer, you can grip a healer, you can silence a healer, you can grip a DPS to another DPS and peel for players. Of course, there's going to be a section for that. Without having to go through the cumbersome process of manually targeting them and doing those things. So it's just a very good macro that you can replace pretty much any ability you want in this section. That's a targeted ability, and you can use it to target any player on their team. Just put those buttons on your bar and let it rip. A really great way to do this is control and shift modifiers that you can put into these macros. I'm gonna let you Google search those. I'm sure there's guides that explain that better than I could, but use that to help with the key binding of these macros. But this is the framework that you would want to use for any of those abilities. Grip, Mind Freeze, you name it. Some other general macros that you have recently as of Shadowlands are Lichborne, that you can use to heal yourself with Death Coil. So this is both a targeting macro and a saving button on your bar macro, which I know a lot of people are a fan of. So what I've done here is /cast Lichborne. Of course, that's just going to use the ability so you can get out of fears. or you get the leech bonus, or you get the damage reduction, of course, from the conduit that we're running, hard into bones. But also, if you continue to press that button, continue to spam that button, you can also heal yourself with Death Coil, something that can only be done while Lichborne is active. So these are for niche situations, but saving space on your bar is always good, and it's still got the full practicality. You can use Lichborne by itself, or you can use that niche situation where you want to heal yourself with Death Coil. This is like when you're running away from a warrior, as we all should. They're very powerful and scary. If you're kiting them with Chains of Ice on them, Chains of Ice, you can see, generates runic power. So you can actually heal yourself without having to run back over to the deadly warrior and pressing Death Strike on him, something you obviously don't want to do. Or if you are hiding behind a pillar, something like this, you can use Death Coil and heal yourself behind the pillar while you're waiting for maybe your healer needs to get behind the pillar as well. You're line of sighting the enemy team. You can get heals on yourself without having to run back out and be counterproductive and be like, oh, I got a Death Strike, oh, I'm dead. So good practical use macro there, saves you some buttons. I recommend using it. And of course, one more that you can look at here is Sacrificial Pact. For Frost, this is a little bit more interesting, but you can also save a button space as Unholy by using this instead. See, if you press this button while you have no pet, so maybe they killed your pet or your Frost and you haven't summoned it yet, if you press it once, you summon a pet. It doesn't immediately sacrifice it. It doesn't take your pet away. If you just press the button once, it gives you a pet. So for Frost, you got your pet out. For Unholy, you can resummon it if it dies. That's a nice button. But the way it saves you space on your bar is that it also has Sac Pact used first. So let's say you press the button, you get your Raised Dead out. If you need to Sac Pact to heal or do a little bit of spike damage, generally for Frost, but of course Unholy can use it to heal as well and then just resummon their pet, which is very good because it's a nice heal. All you have to do is have some runic power and then just, of course, press the button again. Timmy blows up, you get a full heal, and you are good. So those two buttons save their entire practical use. You're not losing any actual effectiveness of the spells just for convenience. They just save you a button with no cost. So there's pretty good macros that you can use for both DK specs. Of course, there will be other macros that I go about in the Frost and Unholy specific guides, but these are some general use ones that I would work through. And of course now, we'll talk about add-ons. Add-ons are general use for all DK specs in any situation. I would use the same add-ons for both. So let's talk about them pretty thoroughly. Of course, we have Gladius, which I talked about earlier. This is pretty much an arena enemy interface. It allows it to be more customizable, bigger, more prominent, and give you a little bit more information than if you're just using the default UI. It shows all the players on the other team, what their spec is, what their class is, how much mana they have, how much health they have, if they're casting a spell, which one is Arena 2 and 3, just by showing them up in order. But of course, it'll also show a little bit more stuff, like this guy, Hunter, has he used Aspect of the Turtle? It will show up with this icon right here. The Mage, is he an Ice Block? It'll show up with that icon right here. Turtle sometimes actually bugs out and the graphical representation goes away, so that's actually pretty useful. But what's even more useful is on the right side of Gladius, you'll see whether or not they have a trinket or what trinket are they using. Medallion, Adaptation, the new trinkets released in the new season. It'll all show up here. And if they don't have their trinket available, it'll show that it's on cooldown and how long until that cooldown is up. So you can coordinate with your teammates, as we'll be talking later in the offensive pressure section. Hey, they don't have trinkets. We need to use some form of me gripping with my macro, pulling the healer in, stunning both players, and then killing them while they have no method of getting out of it. Very useful add-on. Do recommend. Of course, let's go down to the bottom right corner of my screen here. This is details. Totally recommend details. I always think you should have a meter that shows information post the game, because now that the game isn't going and you're not frantic or overwhelmed with information, you can actually look at this stuff and see what the heck is going on and what could I have done differently. And there's more information than you'd even think of from a meter if used properly. So in damage done, of course, you can see, am I doing my rotation well? Who's doing the most damage? Did I kite the warrior well enough during his cooldowns? Oh my god, the warrior has so much damage. We need to CC him more. Our druid on my team, can you root him more? We got to do something about that. You can see what component of their damage is popping off. Like, for example, if a druid pressed Thorns, it puts a reflective Thorns ability on him. So anytime you damage him, you take damage. Of course, I have this problem all the time. If you hit into Thorns, it might kill you. So you could look, oh my god, Thorns does 30% of his damage. I probably should have hit into this less, you know, both of us, me included, okay? I promise, I do that mistake too. But yeah, that's something you can gather from damage done. Healing done, very similar. You can get information, is our healer keeping up? Could I have self-healed more? Did I press enough death strikes? Even, did I kill the Healing Tide Totem? A Healing Tide Totem in PvP is a Shaman PvP talent that makes their Healing Tide do copious amounts of healing. But all you have to do is swap to it and kill it. If you can find that little totem on the ground, give it an obliterate, you just cut out a huge amount of his healing, and you can check things like that. Interrupts, did I get juked a lot? Dispels, did my healer get me out of anything? Could he? Did he have the window to do so? Can he get one of my polys? If there's 0 dispels done, there's probably a problem. Yes, cross CC is a thing where 2 players are crowd controlled at the same time. But if he hadn't dispelled anything the whole game, there's probably something he could do. Don't use this as a way to argue with your healer. Don't be a Flarkness. But if you're playing with your friends and you're all good guys and you're not going to sever relationships because of a freaking video game, you guys can have communication and conversations about, hey, dude, yo, you could have kicked better there, Mr. DK. Well, could I gotten maybe dispelled out of my route so I could get to them? There's information you can get without making it toxic, of course. Be a better man than me and do that to the best of your ability. But details, that's the one I recommend. Hugely powerful. Gives you all the information post-game so you can see little stuff like this, what you could be working on, what went well, what didn't go well. Details, super valuable. I recommend it. Let's go over to the left side of the screen. We got Omnibar. I'm going to bring this up right now. You can do so by typing /Omnibar. And if you go down to the spells section, it's a little hidden here, but just whoop, right down here to these bars up here. You click spells, click over to spells, and it'll show you all of the classes and some really important spells that they have. So what this does is when you have one of these things checked, when the enemy team uses one of these spells, so in case Pillar of Frost, it'll show up the little Pillar of icon or Frost icon right here on Omnibar, and it'll show a timer of how long that has left. So when it shows up first, 59, it'll show up because that's how much seconds are left in Pillar of Frost. You'll know that he used it. And it's like, okay, maybe I should blind this guy. Maybe I should kite him. Maybe I should tell my healer to use a defensive. It's Pillar of Frost, and that's going to be pretty scary, right? So that's a very valuable tool in and of itself, but it also starts counting down how long until it's back. So when there's 10 seconds left until Pillar, he's like, he has his go in 10 seconds. I'm going to pre-kite this. I'm going to line. I'm going to run away. We should use a defensive. Maybe we can bury it if it's going to be A-bomb limb. Let's drop power word barrier from our disc. Yeah, there's a ton of tools. There's a lot of information. A lot of classes have a lot of different ways to respond to this. But what you're going to find out is that half the battle is a visual representation of what's going on. And then the other half is what do I do when I see those things? And when you combine those things, when you put both of that together and practice it for many, many, many games, eventually you're going to get a visual cue. You're going to be like, ah, that's Pillar. And then you're going to see swirly hands flying around him. And you're going, okay, this is his go. I am going to use Anti-Magic Zone on it. So visual cue, action, put them together, and you have stopped something. Congratulations, you're an absolute hero. Look at what you've accomplished, right? And that's what Omnibar can do for you. So you can use anything. You can use offensive cooldowns. You can use defensive cooldowns like Blur or Druid's Barkskin. You can find out what's been giving you the most trouble. Have I been hitting into all their defensives? Have I been not dealing with their offensive cooldowns? And you can do it from class to class too. If Mage is giving you a ton of trouble, track Combustion, track Icy Vein, see when they're popping off and do something about it. And this will all show up on Omnibar in a line here with cooldowns until they're back up. Remember, one of the biggest things you should do is be minimalistic. For example, if you have all of DK's cooldowns, it's just going to be nonsense on your screen, and you're not going to be able to track it well while everything else is going on. So instead of going Pillar, Empower, A-Bomb Limb, tracking all those things, track the thing that pulls them all together, Pillar of Frost. He's always going to press Pillar of Frost when he wants to do his burst rotation, so you don't need the other abilities. Remember, minimalistic is extremely high value. Less is more. Get one important offensive and defensive cooldown for these classes that you're struggling with. Put them on Omnibar, track them, and say, oh, he's got that in 30 seconds, got to run. Or, oh, he doesn't have his defensive for 30 seconds. I can use my burst. We got to go now. Let's do damage. Target calling. You're getting aggressive at that window. That is a good way to use Omnibar. You can do it with any cooldown here. Try, experiment, mix and match. You'll notice I talked about combustion as something that you could put on Omnibar, but I didn't have it checked. And that's because the granddaddy of them all, WeakAuras. WeakAuras are very customizable, very complex, and there's a ton you can do with them. So unfortunately, I will not be able to go over the inner workings of WeakAura in a full guide for it. Instead, go to YouTube, type in how to use WeakAuras, and get up. I'm sure there's tons of awesome guides for that here. It would take up my whole video. Instead, I'm going to show a little bit about WeakAuras and what I personally have done. And first off, a big shout out to probably arguably the best DK to ever play, Mez. I grabbed his WeakAura package, and remember, Google search that to figure out how to do that for yourself. And then I modified. I took certain spells away. I added certain spells. I changed the colors, the size, the positioning, the sounds. Not like he did anything wrong. That's just my personal preference. And I customized it to my whim to make it suit me and my playstyle the best. So I'll show you some that I have. Remember, I talked about it. Combustion is a big one. Combustion is a huge cooldown that fire mages have. It does a ton of damage instantaneously. It will kill anybody if synced up with a rogue mage priest. Go. So somebody on your team is going to get kidney shot. They're going to get stunned, and combustion is going to play on your screen. Remember, WeakAuras are amazing. Not only do they show up here, they play air horns, they play sounds, they play a blast, whatever you want. So you can immediately hear that, recognize it, shows up combustion. It's blue because mage class icon is blue, so it helps you go, okay, immediately recognize the visual and sound cues on your screen and do something. In this case, drop a zone on whoever is kidneyed because they are about to die, right? And that's what I mean by the synergy between visual cues and the action you need to take. That's all PvP is, right? And a million other things. But that's one of PvP's biggest crucial moments is if you see a visual cue, you know something's going on, you got the information on your screen from how you configured your user interface and the add-ons that you use, and then you acted accordingly. It's not just to say, it's combustion. Do we win now? Right? You immediately zone the target who's getting hit, and now you have answered a go. Now you have answered the enemy cooldowns. You pressed a defensive on an extremely important offensive cooldown from them. Congratulations, you're a god now. So some other examples, of course, assassination rogues have Vendetta. Sub-rogues have Shadow Blades. Marksman hunters have double tap. There's other things you can do too, not just offensive cooldowns. Of course, you have mind games. So, hey, mind games on me, get it, dispel it off. You know that you can't heal into mind games because it turns healing into damage on you. So if you heal during mind games, you're going to take damage and you're going to kill yourself accidentally. So this mind games on you, WeakAura is very powerful. Healing Tide Totem. This is something I talked about earlier. Let's talk about it a little bit more detail. There's no macro you can make for totem stomping, right? That was taken out of the game ages ago. This is information, again, that people wouldn't have if not for a source giving it to them. But you can't make a macro for that. So instead, you have to target that totem manually, and you have to hit it with an ability, and you have to kill it. But if you do, against exactly this totem, Healing Tide Totem from Restoration Shamans, you will take out up to 150,000 healing from them from one button. If you have a button that makes them do 150,000 less healing, you're going to press it. Now, of course, it's hard. There's a lot going on. You're dying. You're trying to do damage. And all of a sudden now you're supposed to you play a totem killing minigame. He's got like 6 totems down. Which one is it? I know. This is what takes practice. No matter what I say, no matter how much I talk here, it's all going to take practice, engagement. Believe me, I need more practice myself with that stuff. I got to be faster killing the tide. But what we can do is practice and learn and experiment and improve and play games and just see what WeakAuras, what sound, what color makes us recognize it the most, and how we can get ourselves to kill that tide, or stop pressing Death Strike during mind games, or press zone on the combust. And that's the biggest thing. Practice, practice, practice. But those are some really important WeakAuras that I have. Of course, like I said, just get the Arena CD package once you figured this all out, and customize it how you want. What are you dying to? Make note of that. That's the best thing you can do. If you want to, here, let me scroll through it one more time. Just pause the video at any time. You can see the abilities that I have just by pausing it and copying it yourself. In order to add an ability, I know that you have to get the spell ID. I know that you can change the display text right here. You can, of course, change the size and the positioning. But like I said, you can change the sound, right, and actions. Like I said, that's a huge amount of information that I think you should have a different YouTube video for. So go check out a WeakAuras guide, and hopefully that helps. And those are all the PvP-centric add-ons that I use for Arena. There's one more in my add-ons that's Battleground Enemies. It's just a Gladius-esque interface for Battlegrounds specifically. I recommend picking that up if you like graded Battlegrounds. They're super fun. They're pretty silly. There's a lot you can do as a DK. You can pull 10 people into a pile. You might love it. So Battleground Enemies is that one. The other add-on that specifically I use for my UI is Bartender. But don't look at my UI, it's a mess. It's a long story. Tuck UI back in the day, don't ask. Bartender, you can customize anything. You can customize any bar or any positioning the way you want, so you can make it all suit you. Bartender, big 2 thumbs up, not very PvP centric, but just because people ask, that's the one I use. And that's your add-ons. We did it. We got through it. Which is going to lead us right into our next section, which is going to be defensive cooldowns, stopping goes. We talked about this a little bit already, but it's effectively answering the enemy team defensive management. That's because DKs have very similar tools for this, and I wanted to go over them in the general section because, you know, they share defensive cooldowns, they share peeling tools, they share a lot of those things. So I wanted to go through that in this section right here. And it's starting with IBF, Icebound Fortitude. There's the lingo there. Icebound Fortitude is a 30% wall, not super big, on a 3-minute cooldown for 8 seconds. That's pretty bad. So what it really gains value with is the fact that it immunes all stuns. But it's obviously even better than that. It's also going to get you out of any stuns that you're in, and that's where the power lies, because people die in stuns. That's what happens. A rogue presses kidney shot on you, and that's the end of it, right? So having an ability that you can answer one go pretty much entirely by yourself, by not only making you immune to the stun he puts you in, giving you a wall, it also makes you immune to future stuns. So he cannot just like re-stun you out of that like somebody could do on a trinket. IBF is extremely powerful for that reason. So it's important, and believe me, this is a problem that I have, that we do not overlap it with healer cooldowns. Icebound Fortitude plus Death Strikes, and maybe even something like Sac Pact, should be enough to stop a go by yourself if used properly. For example, you get Storm Bolted, Warrior uses Avatar, and Enhance uses Heroism. You IBF the first bit of that to wall high, so all the damage that they do in that window is reduced, but also you can now Death Strike, you can change, you can kite, you can run away, you can survive better because you're not in the stun that they used to set it up. This is an extremely impactful defensive cooldown. So when are you going to use it, right? Well, there's not a set answer to everything in PvP, unfortunately. But you're going to use it generally when your healer is not going to use a cooldown, as in they're crowd controlled, they're in a clone, they're in a polymorph, so you don't overlap with them, and you use it at the beginning of his stun at high health. So you can wall more damage, and you can immune all of the stun and any future stuns. And then you want to pair it to make sure with any peeling techniques that we'll talk about soon, Death Strike, Sac Pact, anything else that you can now use because you're out of the stun, so you're not controlled in any way. So that's IBF. Very powerful tool. Both DKs use that the same way. Make sure you remember the immunity component. You can also, and perhaps this is a sin, use it fairly aggressively. Maybe I use it aggressively too much. Maybe you can do better than me. But it is an aggressive tool, and there are windows where absolutely it should be done. Let's say you're not getting focused the entire game, you're not getting touched, and you're about to win the game, and a rogue peels you, or a windwalker peels you with a sweep, or a kidney shot, you know, a storm bolt. You're in a stun now, but let's say your target is 3% health, and you have a killing machine obliterate that you just want to press. You can get out of that, and you don't have Trinket. You can just get out of the stun. Yes, you're blowing a major defensive for it, but if it wins you the game, nobody on your team is going to complain. If you get out of that stun and finish off a 3% health target, that is a good way to use it. If you get out of that stun to try and finish a 100% health target, then maybe it's a problem. So one of the biggest things about DK is managing the fact that all of your defensives tend to have offensive components too, and that is IBF's offensive component, which can lead us directly into Anti-Magic Shell that works a very similar way. That's only for Magic CC, but of course, in addition to the fact that this ability gives you a huge absorb for 5 seconds, it's also going to prevent the application of any magical effects. It says it right in the ability description right there, which includes crowd control, poly, fear, clone, roots, all of those things that will stop you from killing the enemy team. Of course, AMS prevents all of them and generates some runic power, so you can have a little bit more rune generation. That's not really that important. Another one, of course, maybe I use it too offensively, but it is one of those things that you have to manage the pacing of the game. Are there 2 players that could easily punish you? Are you getting cleaved to death the entire time and blowing AMS to try and stop a root makes them just swap to you and kill you? Maybe you shouldn't use it aggressively. Is a mage casting poly on you and the kill target is clearly your partner, a warrior, let's say, and the second he polys you, he's going to kill your partner, and you have no way to peel because you're in a poly. You can use Anti-Magic Shell on that poly and peel for your teammate, maybe with zone, maybe with blind. Whoop, just got all 3. They're all blinded now. They're not doing damage to you. So while AMS is an obvious defensive tool, if you're taking magical damage, you can use AMS to heal. You also get runic power, so you can death strike more and heal even more. It is also a tool that far outweighs just being a button you press when you're getting a fireball cast on you, right? It can prevent CC to finish off kills. It can prevent CC on you to peel for your teammates. It's not always just hyper aggressive to AMS a CC. Sometimes you have to do it, or your warrior on your team or your DH or your Windwalker is about to die. So Anti-Magic Shell, extremely important to learn all of the use cases of it, and I know. I only gave you a few. You can also AMS a Cyclone coming in, or a Fear if you don't have Lichborne. Or if he's casting Entangling Root manually, like an Archer is, you can AMS that to stay mobile, stay aggressive if you're not getting touched. These use cases are not something I can go over in one video. Look at this. I've already talked and talked and talked, and I've only scratched the surface. So what do you have to do? Play. Play, play, play. Look at all of the CC effects you find yourself caught in. Try and learn to use Gladius to show you when they're casting these spells and when it's a good call to press that button and immune it. These are the things you have to do. Practice, watch streamers, learn, talk to your teammates after the game, practice more, practice again. That is what you can do for these abilities. And then for other defensive cooldowns, we have the big daddy that I've talked about probably 5 times now, is Anti-Magic Zone. I promised that I would talk about how to answer very important cooldowns for the other team. Well, let's go about that right now. Your biggest tool is Anti-Magic Zone with this PvP talent, Dome of Ancient Shadow. Well, when are you using it, right? Give us some concrete information. Will do, because my WeakAuras show them themselves. Wings from a Paladin. Rep Paladin does a ton of damage. Yes, they are a melee, but it's all holy damage, and holy is magical. So when you see the glowing wings or hear the air horns come up on your screen, give your team an Anti-Magic Zone. What about when you see combustion that we talked about? Give the player who's getting kidneyed and combusted on an Anti-Magic Zone. How about a DK pressing A-Bomb Limb, pulling them all into one point? Well, how about you put an Anti-Magic Zone on that point? All you have to do is recognize the high magical output classes: DK, Rep Pally, Fire Mage, Double Caster, Wizards like Locke, doing Dark Soul, Death Bolt, Destrolox doing Dark Soul, Chaos Bolt. These are times to press Anti-Magic Zone. And all you have to do is remember that it should be paired up, not with just the fact that the enemy team is doing damage, but with the offensive cooldown being pressed. For example, if you say, crap, I took a lot of damage, you waited too long, and now I took a lot of damage and I need to zone, it might be too late. It might actually be too late, because let's say they have some melee damage on their team, they can finish your partner. Instead, Don't wait for damage to be dealt. Wait for the cooldown to be pressed and zone instantly, because then it won't be too late. You see combustion, you zone. You don't see a 30% health guy in zone. You see the cooldown in zone. That's what it means to answer the enemy team's cooldowns. You're not doing it based on health pools. You're doing it based on what buttons they pressed. And that's really, really valuable. So there's another important cooldown that all DKs have that you can use. Of course, we have one that I touched on briefly. There's Lichborne. This, like AMS, can be used as a CC answer, and IBF can be used as a CC answer. It's another one that makes you immune, so you can use it while in those CCs. That's Fear, Charm, Sleep. Succubuses have Sleep from Lock. Lots of classes have Fear. And Charm is from Mind Control. So you can get out of mind controls, you can get out of fears. You can also make yourself undead with it to use Lichborne healing on yourself, but Polymorph and Hex can only be cast on humanoid targets, which undead is an undead. So you can't get polyed while you're Lichborne. See all of the niche stuff that you may or may not have had information for. You can Lichborne a Fear, or you can Lichborne on a mage when you see Gladius showing that he's casting poly, and you can immune that poly and any future polys for the entire duration of Lichborne. That is a multi-faceted tool in your disposal. So preventing CC with Lichborne is even better than preventing it with AMS, because Lichborne is not something you're just throwing away like, oh crap, now I don't have a 30k healing absorb or a 50k healing absorb when we're geared. It is actually just a button that's perfect for immuning CC. That's one of its core features. So getting out of fear with it, absolutely, yes please. Getting out of mind control, sure thing. And preventing a polymorph or a hex cast on you that you see over here, absolutely, definitely, 100%. Another well done, good use of defensive cooldown, buddy. You did a great job. And that's most of it. You have another tool that actually becomes defensive, especially in Shadowlands, called Def's Advance, because it makes you faster, which allows you to kite or gain on the enemy. Of course, this is going to be another dual-faceted ability, which a lot of DK abilities have, which I really enjoy. It also makes you immune to slows, so people cannot stop you from advancing or stop you from getting away if you need to kite with Chains of Ice. But there's another thing it can do. It also makes you immune to all effects that kind of move your character. Nox, Spear, Warrior, Spear that he puts on the ground, you can Def's Advance, walk right out of it. What about Ring of Peace? Walk right through it. So if you're getting ropped into a wall, Ring of Peace into a wall, you can't do anything really because you're stuck there, so you could Def's Advance, walk out of it. That's a defensive usage of that button. If he drops a spear, walk right out of it. If you may get knocked like you're on bridge map and an Ellie's walking up to you, Def's Advance, now he can't do that because he might want to knock you into a terrible position, right? Or if a warrior is trying to gain on you, you have chains on him, but you're a little slowed, you can Def's Advance. Now you're not slowed anymore. You can get some huge distance and stop him when he's pressing Avatar. Warbreaker, these are warrior offensive cooldowns. Ret, you can do the same thing. Get away from him. Def's Advance, run away. You can Def's Advance, run in chains. That's a very, very important thing to just get away from players that are attacking you or get toward them when they're trying to peel you. Def's Advance, another very, very multifaceted, very powerful ability that DKs have. Great ability they added to the game. That would do it for pretty much both spec-centric abilities. Of course, you have some unique ones that we'll talk about in the respective videos, but for DK as a whole, that's your defensive cooldown management. Did I talk about every single situation? Of course not. This has already been too long for your attention span, right? It's certainly too long for most. I have a problem with that. You can yell at me for it if you want, but there's a lot to be gained from taking this information and then just gathering more backing for it, gathering more evidence for it by just playing the game yourself. So now you have the core mechanics and you'll figure out more as you experiment and play. Practice really is the best way to do it, but those are the defensive cooldowns. So we'll move into peeling. I talked a lot about this. This is really important. The best peeling tools you have is this one right here. Chains of Ice. It's one rune. It's undispellable. That means they cannot dispel the slow off of them. They cannot remove it with magical dispels. It is a 30-yard range, and it is a 70% slow. These all are like some of the best mechanics for a slow you could possibly have. It's the slowest they can be. It's not dispellable, it's a very high range, and it's not a very high cost, meaning Chains of Ice is your peeling tool. It's a proactive peeling tool though. If both people have connected to your healer and they already have him stunned, you missed your opportunity because you put Chains of Ice on them, but they don't need to move anywhere. The healer's stunned, they're already on him, they're gonna kill him. So instead of just saying, I'm gonna press Chains of Ice on you because the warrior just got to you and pressed all of his cooldowns, you gotta keep Chains of Ice. You gotta keep Chains of Ice on them and peel perpetually. You gotta keep them slowed, keep them controlled. You gotta be kiting ahead of time. When you see Warbreaker, you gotta chains and run away. You have tools to get away from him, right? We talked about that already. When you see Doomwinds from an enhancement shaman, you can chains them, you can run away. If you see them trying to, like they're moving away from you over to your healer, over to your other DPS, maybe you're playing with a caster, you have to keep them chains to keep them off your teammates. So unlike some of our other multifaceted abilities, Chains of Ice does not require much thought. You kind of have to keep it up always. The best value you have is keeping Chains of Ice up as much as you possibly can. And that means not letting it fall off. You don't really have to keep it on the healer, though there are valuable times for that to happen, especially if he's trying to get away out of a A-bomb limb go, or if he's trying to run off and go for a drink, or if he's trying to run across the map and go for your healer. There's another situation, he might be trying to CC your healer for a long time. If you see their healer running at you, crossing the map, going unabated across the map, just a priest running at you for a fear, press chains as he's running, and all of a sudden, he's not getting across the map very fast. And you can actually even pull him over to you and get a ton of damage, right? So, Chains of Ice, pretty much a catch-all. Should be used almost all the time. It should be kept up nearly infinite uptime. You have the toolkit to do that, and you really should. It is the ultimate peeling tool that DKs have. But remember, it's bad if they're already on the player they're trying to get to. So you have to coordinate and call with your teammates. I have chains on them. Run, kite, move. Or coordinate with yourself. Use a button to get away from there. Or just press it ahead of time and don't let them connect to your healer in the first place. In coordination, of course, you have grip. Grip chains. If you grip a melee off your healer and put Chains of Ice on him, now you've done already what I was saying to do, where you've gotten some distance between you and the enemy warrior, the enemy ret, the enemy rogue, and the healer, and you've got him slowed. So of course, Death Grip, in addition to your setup tool, is also a fantastic peel. I don't think anybody needs to be told that twice. Pulling people away from other people and keeping them very slow is a good way to stop them from doing damage. You can also grip casts. You can grip healers away when they're going for CC, like I mentioned. You can grip a mage back to you so you can crank him and stop him from doing damage just from raw pressure. Death Grip and Chains together pretty much create the entirety of DK's peeling toolkit. Frost and Unholy have little niche things that they can use as well, which I will talk about in their respective guides, but Death Grip and Chains is the core features of DK that allows us to keep our teammates alive and to keep their team disrupted, so they're not just doing whatever they want all game. And this is pretty rudimentary information, but the uptime of chains and the understanding of when to grip, I cannot stress the importance of that. So again, playing games to see these interactions in real time. See, you all of a sudden, after I've said this now, you see, wait, why is the Arduin on their team just in cap form running at my, oh my god, it's going to bash clone him. And you grip him in, you chains him, he shifts it, you chains him again, the priest gets behind the pillar, and all of a sudden, now the druid's in the middle of the map, your priest is not CC'd at all, that you disrupted what they were going to do, and you got yourself in a great situation. Those are the things you're going to have to see, practice, experiment, and learn. And that's your peeling toolkit specifically for DK. Of course, you have a kick, which should be used to stop casts, Poly, Chaos Bolt, anything effectively game-changing. A Polymorph is a 7-second CC. A Chaos Bolt could hit you for 20k. A Frost Bolt could even hit you for 20k when all their spells are cast, or their cooldowns are cast, rather. So, yeah, of course, using Mind Freeze on priority spells is huge. Can I go through every single one of those priority spells? No. But, you know, from playing, you'll start to learn what they are. Unstable Affliction, Frostbolt, Polymorph, Fear, Clone. Effects that have an immediate impact on the game, you can stop them. it'd be a perfect play. You can also, of course, when you're after a healer, you can kick them to get more pressure. So it's, of course, a pressure button. We all know that. We know what kick is going to do. Or you can stop a Hex if you're on our Shaman, stop some cross CC there. Just make sure you're not blowing it out on nothing. And having good synergy with your teammate to not overlap kicks is just all about communication. I have next kick. Easiest thing you've ever said, right? It's about quick, simple, confident communication. I have next kick. Then if he overlaps with you, there's nothing you can do. You probably have to say it louder or yell at him like I do. But I have next kick. And then if you don't overlap, then he has the next kick after that. And you guys are doing more disruption without wasting the potential of your toolkits. And that's it. That's your defensive management. Trading cooldowns into their offensive cooldowns is one of the most important things you can do. And I hope that this gave you some guidance on what to look for when combined with the WeakAuras section of other things to look for. That's also peeling and a little bit of synergies with your teammates. Finally, I wanted to close out by explaining some of the things that were going to happen in the specific guides, the Frost and Unholy ones. We're going to not just be talking about like offensive cooldowns and the macros that we can use, and of course how to peel as Frost versus how to peel as Unholy, but popular matchups and how each spec plays into them is going to be specifically in those videos, as well as who to target. This is going to be very, very important because I know people ask me, like, target, who do I go? What do I hit? What do I hit in this comp? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do right out of the gate. What am I supposed to do? And I think those things drastically change based on what spec you're playing. So I'm going to go over all those sections in the unique videos. I hope this was a good introduction so far, but you're going to have to go now to the Frost and Unholy versions of these beginner's guides to get the rest of the information that you need. So hopefully this helped in some way. I hope the next videos complete the education that you need. And if there's anything else that you have questions on or anything that I did wrong, please feel free to talk to me in the comments below. Of course, I know I'm a little rambly. That I'm not sure I'll be able to change. I'm not much of a YouTuber, to be honest. I'm just trying to help in some way. I'm going to try and make these as concise as possible for the individual guides and keep getting better as a YouTuber as I go on. A little future update comp video will be coming after this set of 3. So if you're looking for information on what comps to queue, we've got an entire video for that as well. Okay, boys, good luck in the next ones. Have a great season, and I will see you real soon.